Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for joining me this afternoon. I am Auron MacIntyre. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the gender wars and the use of sex in the attempt of the total state to take over and dismantle all normal human bonds, all barriers to centralized power. We've got a couple interesting stories today, pretty ridiculous stories, as you can probably tell from the title of this particular episode. One about how the Belgian government is now compelling prostitutes to service customers. They want to make sure there's no discrimination. Got to get that DEI everywhere, even in blowjob distribution, it would seem. And so we'll talk about why the state is mandating this and what role this plays in the wider war against the ability of people to push back against state power. Also, going to talk about how a Kansas City Chiefs player, a kicker, has set the world on fire. The left have absolutely lost their mind because this guy loves his wife and really appreciates the fact that she focuses on being a great wife, raising his children, and generally taking care of the community. I understand that's the worst thing that any leftist could possibly imagine. And of course, this is the reason that he now needs to be destroyed. But before we do all that, guys, let me tell you a little bit about today's sponsor, ISI. Universities today aren't just neglecting real education, they're actively undermining it, and we can't let them get away with it. America was made for an educated and engaged citizenry. The Intercollegiate Studies Institute is here to help. ISI offers programs and opportunities for conservative students across the country. ISI understands that conservatives and right of center students feel isolated on college campuses and that you're often fighting for your own reputation, dignity, and future. Through ISI, you can learn about what Russell Kirk called the permanent things, the philosophical and political teachings that shaped and made Western civilization great. ISI offers many opportunities to jumpstart your career. They have fellowships at some of the nation's top conservative publications like National Review, The American Conservative, and The College Thinker. If you're a graduate student, ISI offers funding opportunities to sponsor the next great generation of college professors. Through ISI, you can work with conservative thinkers who are making a difference. Thinkers like Chris Rufo, who currently has an ISI researcher helping him with his book. But perhaps most importantly, ISI offers college students a community of people that can help them grow. If you're a college student, ISI can help you start a student organization or a student newspaper or meet other like-minded students at their various conferences and events. ISI is here to educate the next generation of great Americans. To learn more, go to isi.org. That's isi.org. All right, so let's dive right into this first story from the Publica. It says Belgian government will intervene in cases where prostitutes refuse sexual acts too often. You might think, okay, this seems pretty crazy. Where is the state getting this authority? I mean, obviously, they push this propaganda. We constantly hear actually about this, how important it is for people to have sexual access. If you haven't heard about this, this is a ongoing narrative on the left. This especially tends to pop up with trans individuals, quote unquote, where you can't be biased against these people. You have to treat them as if they are women. You have to treat them as if they have the same value. You can't have a preference for an actual woman, and actual biological woman with all the parts that are supposed to be there. That's bigotry. That's of course terrible homophobia, or whatever you would call it, transphobia. So this has already been advanced as a narrative. Of course, we hear this about weight, we hear this about race. You're not allowed to have any preferences when it comes to sex. You need to be sexually available to everyone. You think this would be at odds with the left's understanding of women, right? Well, women should have rights, women should be protected. But it's actually not, because ultimately they don't care about women. They don't care about the well-being of women. The only reason that they talk about women in the way that they do is because they want to use it as a bludgeon to dismantle traditional gender roles, traditional identities, traditional barriers to state power that arise from the organic institutions that marriage and other social arrangements tend to provide. Excuse me, guys. I'm still trying to get over a cold here, so if I'm drinking water a lot, it's to keep from hacking too bad. That's what you get when you have to talk all day trying to do book press while you're sick, and then also do a show. This is why, excuse me, this is why they need to push this stuff down, right? This is actually why they have this crusade, in on behalf of women, because it's not about women at all. It's about dismantling all of these things that would otherwise keep them from being able to control people. And we'll see exactly how that plans here. Because how do they get the authority to go ahead and force prostitutes to service certain people? Oh, well, it's because it's tying them to the state. It's tying them to state benefits. This is always how it works. A new law in Belgium is celebrated by activists for providing a labor contract to prostitutes, who also enable their pimps to punish them with a government mediator if they refuse sex more than 10 times in a 6-month period. I love this imagery of like an HR lady, gross HR lady sitting there with the problem glasses and the clipboard, tapping the pencil, trying to see, how many times have you refused to do a sex act? Sorry, we're gonna have to kick this up the ladder to the next. It's a dystopian nightmare, but it's like the most boring dystopian nightmare. Man, we can't get something cool, like we can't get Mad Max or Fallout or something at least that's exciting. We get the worst possible dystopia. It's like Brazil on steroids, where HR is sitting there dictating what a hooker does with the John to make sure that it all complies with the DEI agenda. Yeah, someone said forget your pimp slap. Now you have the HR slap, right? That's how they keep them in line. The Belgian parliament voted for the law on May 3rd with 93 in favor, 0 opposed. The legislation is being touted as a win by the Belgian Union for Sex Workers. Great that they have a union for that. Fantastic. This is another problem with the formalization of all this stuff. Look, prostitution has always existed, and some conservatives and Christians will be a little angry with me for pointing this out, but it's just true, and I think it's important to recognize. Even though I think that prostitution is not great, it's obviously against God's teaching, and you shouldn't engage in it. There's always been an understanding that prostitution will exist in any given society, right? Like this is like trying to get rid of racism, or trying to get rid of crime, or trying to get rid of selfishness. Like these are just parts of the human condition, and you can punish it and you can try to correct it, but ultimately this thing's going to just be true. And there's a danger in trying to be too utopian. Like you can disincentivize it. You can kind of say, well, we keep it in this corner over here because it's not good and you should look down on it. But the desire here is to bring it into the full light, like bring it under the managerial regime, bring it under the DEI bureaucracy. And so what you end up doing is you get these like organized unions for sex workers, something that otherwise should really be like a seedy thing that's done in the corner of a town that everybody knows, don't go there. If you go there, you're probably not a great person. But you also know, like, you probably can't totally eradicate it. Instead, they need to bring all of this licentiousness forward. They need to normalize it. They need to make it part of the system, because they need to make all things part of the system. And that's one of the problems with this strict, stark, bare, cold bureaucracy. It doesn't have the ability to differentiate between cultural norms and apply them and understand a certain amount of social delicacies. It just has to lay everything out into these cold, stark partitions, so that they can be managed and accounted for in a spreadsheet. Uh, so the law outlines that prostitutes will receive health insurance, of course, a pension, maternity and holiday leave. Sorry, your mom had to take maternity leave from being a hooker. But the state's paying for it, so that's good. At least, uh, yeah, it's not great, guys. Things society's not doing well. And unemployment benefits. I have questions about unemployment benefits for prostitutes. Like, I, I have questions. We'll just leave it there. Their pimps will be forced to provide them with a safety button to use for emergencies. The website claims that the law is a historic step in the battle for sex workers' rights, which is amazing, right? Because they're going to get all these rights, and the rights they're getting are the rights to be materially dependent on the state, right? Get the pension and get the healthcare benefits. Well, what are they giving up? Personal choice as to whether they even want to engage in this at all. They'll take penalties for not doing so. Ugh, throat is dry. Okay, so so of course they're gaining rights, which are the rights to be managed by this bureaucracy, They ultimately give up all their personal decision making power, which is really probably the only power you have if you've fallen into prostitution, right? That's kind of the last thing that you, at least the whole reason that people are paying you as a prostitute is basically because you've chosen to give up, to give them something. And the fact that that last bit of power has been taken from you. I think that's just called sex slavery, actually. But I guess as long as you get the maternity leave. All pimps must have a registered office. Sorry, going down to the pimping office, guys. I might not, I don't know. Got to make sure that they have the registered office and apply to the Belgian government for approval to offer contracts to prostitutes. The contracts will be disguised as hotel, restaurant, cafe contracts so that they can remain anonymous. Uh, so yeah, just kind of an amazing thing that there's a certain number of times you're allowed to say no to particular sex acts or particular clients, and if you do it too often, you're going to get penalized. And of course, the reason they're doing this is that famously, prostitutes, especially in many of these European countries that have suddenly been flooded by migrants from foreign nations, show a particular preference for people of certain ethnic backgrounds, people who they avoid people who have certain sexual proclivities because they are more likely to harm them or likely to have a sexually transmitted disease, put them in danger. So a lot of the bias shown, and this is the problem all over and over again, right? This is always the problem, whether it's hiring, whether it's the application of law, whether we actually put people in jail for certain crimes, or even down to the fact that prostitutes are choosing clients. There seems to be a repeatable pattern of preference, and that keeps up showing a disparity in groups. And as long as your God is equality, right? As long as your God is equality, then it's okay. You can literally justify forcing prostitutes to have sex with people as long as your goal is absolute equality in any situation. And that's what it has to be, because we sold people this lie. This is the lie of liberalism, that everyone will have every institution, even the prostitute, will be neutral. And because it's neutral, it will have to choose every group the same, even if those groups statistically reliably show themselves to be more violent or carry other kind of risk factors that people might want to avoid. And so you end up with the scenario where the government has to put their thumb on the scale for everything, even when it comes to sex work. And so it's just an amazing thing to watch. Now, it's really interesting that this is something that was predicted by Huxley in Brave New World, right? Many people correctly point out that kind of the Western, especially the American version of the totalitarian state, is much closer to Huxley than it is to 1984. And the reason is that Huxley understood that you didn't need to use jackboots and gulags and a lot of violence if you can condition people, if you can use social conditioning, if you can use soft power to constantly propagandize people, yes, but also to condition them to certain weaknesses, certain vices. You can use the vice ultimately to control people in a much more reliable and less costly way. It's a lot easier to get people addicted to porn or sex or drugs or electronic entertainment of some kind and control them that way than it is to like physically round them up into a train and take them to the gulag. And so, over time, he recognized that this would be probably the route that our elites would take, and that turned out to be the case. And in Brave New World, one of the themes is that all of the girls need to be sterilized, right? They're always on birth control so that they can have sex with anyone basically who wants to. And if they decide not to have sex with one of the men who want to have sex with them, the other women chastise them. Say, "Oh, you want to be exclusive? You don't want to exclude, or you want to exclude people from this?" Like, that's the ultimate sin, is that you would prefer a particular guy or even just a particular kind of guy over just having sex with everyone all the time. Because when you have sex with everyone all the time, or when you lose the ability to prefer someone in anything, be it employment or who you hang out with, or how you organize your society, what you end up doing is basically depersonalizing every human act. Human acts are exercises in, I'm going to say this, ooh, I know, prejudice. All of them. Sorry, but like I prefer my wife over other women. I prefer my family over other families. I prefer my church over other churches. I prefer my friends over other people. And that is an act of prejudice. So in some cases, those people have done things to warrant my preference, but in some cases, I simply prefer them because I do. And that's my right as a human being, and that's what makes me who I am, and that's what gives me my identity. And when you force people to lose those preferences, when they're unable to exercise those natural inclinations and prejudices, what happens is they become less human. They become more easy to manage. They can be completely manipulated, controlled, and rewired. And we see this works its way all the way down even to prostitution, because you need to be able to disassemble preference at every level in order to deliver this universal promise of equality, right? Equal access to everything all the time, even other human beings, right? We see this continuously. This is why there's a open attack on the right of free association in the United States, because we need to remove the ability of people to choose each other. You have to always have access to everything, even other human beings, even when it comes to the most intimate acts you can imagine. Even in the most seedy underworld, the things that used to be, run by criminals and gangs, the state needs to come in. It needs to manage every one of these, and it needs to apply this equal opportunity DEI affirmative action for prostitution type of ideology. And and this is really the amazing thing, right? Because what liberalism promised, as Charles Haywood phrases it, is the emancipation of from all bonds not continuously chosen, right? A traditional society, I don't choose my family, I don't choose my clan, I don't choose my religion. I probably don't even choose my profession. I probably have very limited choice on who I marry. I mean, some of these things have changed over the years. A lot of them we prefer these things, right? We say I'm glad that I have these choices. But all of that, all of those unchosen bonds that used to be part of everybody's life. Hey, I have to take care of my parents. And then I have to take care of my children. I have to take care of the people next to me. I have duties to my God and to my Baron and to all of these different social spheres. They created an identity. They kept us from being just completely creations of outside, impersonal, inhuman forces. Now, we may not like all of those things, and some of them have certainly been abused throughout the years, right? It's not like every one of these bonds and every one of these unchosen obligations has been great for people. But our attempts to free people from these things has obviously gone to a place of not just absurdity, but sick degradation. In an attempt to break down all of these bonds, right? Oh, well, don't worry, women. You don't have to be married to a man. You don't have to be part of a family. You don't have to be dependent on men. What ends up happening to women? State mandated sex acts. Oh, you've been liberated from all of these unchosen bonds, but actually, in the end, you still end up being a slave. And now you're a slave to the state, who certainly doesn't care about you, will never love you, will never matter. You're still dependent on somebody. But you see what these women are trading all of this for, right? They're trading it for pensions, health insurance, maternity leave, holiday. What are they doing? They're trading all of their liberty, all of their ability to have choice for security, the kind of security that used to be offered to women by husbands. So they're just marrying the state, and the state is pimping them out for it. That's what's happening. You didn't replace marriage. You didn't get rid of marriage. You didn't get rid of dependency. You just replaced it with something much more horrific, much more degrading, much more artificial and dehumanizing. And we end up in this horrific dystopia where the government is sending an HR lady into your bedroom to make sure, or wherever I guess you're plying your trade, to make sure that you're delivering the proper sex acts to the proper people who are increasingly dangerous, and the state is bringing them in on purpose to destabilize your society, and now they're gonna like force you to service them as a prostitute. So yeah, pretty amazingly horrific. But uh, I thought this dovetails well with our next story, one that has been blowing up everywhere. So if you haven't seen this yet, uh, the kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs, Harrison Butker, gave a speech, and in that speech, he was talking to a Catholic university. So keep in mind that when you go ahead and listen to this, it's not him giving this speech to Harvard or Yale. He's not talking to a bunch of people who are all planning to like become New York Times reporters and live in apartments with their cats and drink wine. Like this is talking to a bunch of traditional Catholic men and women, young men and women who are starting their lives off. And he's giving this speech, probably like a commencement. I'm not sure, but it seems like that's the case. And I'm going to go ahead and play what he says here. Now, I'm playing this off a leftist, and you can read what he says up here before we get started. The best part about Harrison Butker being a misogynist psycho is that a lot of dudes can headhunt this stupid kicker ass for a 15-yard penalty next season and get a lifetime of credit with the woman in their lives. So this is how like evil leftists have become. This guy, we'll play his speech in a second, but this guy is about to say that he really loves his wife and the fact that she acts as a wife and enables an amazing household and life for him and his children. And that is so enraging to this person that they want this guy to die. They say, oh, well, it'll be great when people go out and try to break this guy's neck and women will cheer him. That's where we're at right now. Now I'm going to play this because it does have the audio, and the audio is correct, but he intercuts this with a Handmaid's Tale. I left it this way because I want you to see how insane the left is right now, where they think that this speech is about like enslaving women and turning them into like baby manufacturing ovens or something here. We'll play this real quick. So you can see why this guy is now the greatest enemy the left has ever had. So to be clear, what he's saying here, he's not saying no women can go into the workplace. He's not saying women can't be successful or shouldn't be successful. He's not saying that women don't have, shouldn't have the ability to work or any of these things. He's not saying any of that. He's not discouraging any of that. But what he is saying is realistically, especially in front of a Catholic Christian audience, a lot of you are going to want to start families. And what he's saying is that's okay. Yeah, some of you are going to go have great careers, and that's awesome. But a lot of you are going to go start families, and that's important too. That has a lot of value. And this is a message that's critical. Not that no women can go out and have fulfilling careers. There's certainly women for whom that is important, or at different times in their lives that becomes important. But that prioritizing family is not evil. In fact, it is virtuous. And that it is great in this society that is not valuing this choice, that there are many of you who are in this Catholic crowd of religious people who are going to make that choice. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate that. This is the Handmaid's Tale, right? This is what they're losing their mind over. Oh, people are saying that it is not playing the sound. Sorry, hold on a second. Let me see if I can fix that real quick. Don't want to go through this whole thing without you guys being able to hear that. Let me try this. I shared it in a different way. Immediately regret it. The excitement of live streams, guys. Sometimes you got to switch up how this works. Let's see. All right. Hopefully it will pick up the sound this time. Please tell me, give me like a thumbs up in chat if the sound is working.
For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you? How many of you are sitting here now, about to cross this stage, and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world.
Okay. Looks like the audio is working this time. So thank you guys. Thank you, chat, for helping. I could have gone through the whole show not knowing that you didn't hear what he said. So I appreciate you coming to the rescue there. So yeah, this time you actually heard what I was talking about, right? He's obviously not telling women, oh, no one can go into the workplace. You should never go into the workplace. It's bad if you go there. He's just saying, look, most of you being, traditional Catholics, having this goal of having families, are going to turn around and, start families. And that's awesome. And I want to tell you how much I value that. I want to tell you how much that's a worthy thing and how that improves the life of my children and my family.
I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker.
Love it. Right. Like the whole, all the women bowing in The Handmaid's Tale because he said it's okay to be a housewife if you want to be. So yeah, this is the evil thing that he's done. This is why he is now public enemy number one for the entire left. And I want to show you, obviously, like he's getting death threats for this. Like this is how far it's gone. Let me show you how some people are lying about this here real quick. Let me up. So obviously you just heard the words. Now that I turn the sound on the second time, you heard the words of his speech. Let's see what the Hill said. What did the Hill say about this speech? It said, news anchor Laura Ingraham backed Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker after he gave a controversial college graduation speech telling women that their rightful place is in the kitchen. Obviously, he did not lose that language. Obviously, that is a lie. Obviously, the paper is openly lying in an attempt to hurt this guy's life. And by the way, guess what happened after he gave this speech? After people started lying about what he said, he was condemned by the NFL. The NFL rushed out. Excuse me. The NFL rushed out and condemned this guy. Formally gave a formal condemnation and called this an attack on the LGBTQ community. Now you might be thinking to yourself, how is this an attack on the LGBTQ community? And I'm going to tell you, because they're correct, because it is. So here's what's happening here. All right. Like we talked about in the previous story with the state mandated prostitution, it is very critical for the modern managerial state to break down all barriers between them and total control of the individual. Any of the traditional bonds that exist between man and wife, between parent and child, stand as an impediment to the continued domination of the total state everywhere. And so if they allow this to continue, if they allow men to talk like this and say, I'm going to love my wife and I'm going to treat her as someone of great value, and we are going to form a partnership, and she is going to do an amazing thing and bring other humans into the world and care for them, and we are going to educate them, not the state, and we are going to give them particular ideas about who God is and how we treat each other and how we should live our lives and what moral virtue and goodness looks like, then that means the state can't do it. And state needs to do it, because what the state has done is created a wildly artificial and abstract reality for the purpose of gaining power. The more artificial a world they create, the more dependent individuals are on them for its continuance. And anybody who says, no, we're not going to be plugged into that system, We're going to break away and we are going to be our own thing. We are going to be our own family. We are going to be our own religion. We are going to be our own community. And we are going to have those organic traditional bonds that push back against the control of the state. They are a threat. And this is why LGBTQ ideology has been a massive wedge. That's why they're forcing it onto people. We just had a federal court say that a school teaching kindergartners about LGBTQ issues, the parents cannot check out. They cannot exempt them from that education on religious grounds. That just came out. This is obviously the agenda of the state, because if they can force that sexual identity onto young children and say that it is a violation of the rights of the child if they don't receive that state mandated propaganda on sexual identity, then they can break the power of the parent. They can break the authority of the parent, the natural bonds between parent and child. And so they need to lie about this guy. They need to condemn this guy. Even the NFL, some stupid sports organization, knows that it's their job to immediately go out and not just condemn this guy. Remember, football players go out and rape women. They go out and do drugs. They go out and deal drugs. They go out and shoot people. They do all kinds of horrific stuff all the time. And the NFL doesn't make a whole big deal about denouncing them. But one guy stands up in front of a bunch of Catholic young people and says, by the way, while it's cool that a lot of you will go out and get a good job, it's even better that a lot of you are about to start families. And the fact that you're willing to make that sacrifice makes the world a better place. That guy's got to burn, right? That's an attack on the LGBT community, and they're right. Because if guys like that are having wholesome families, traditional families that protect them from the authority of the state, the LGBTQ ideology can't get in there to break down that traditional bond and create power for the state. And that's what they're really worried about. And so it's now open season on this guy. Not only are they running stories like this, the actual government, the city government doxed him, openly making it clear that they were declaring open season on this guy. They want him hurt. They want someone to do violence to him. The state is literally trying to send people to harm this guy for no other reason than loving his wife and showing his admiration for her ability and her sacrifice in raising a family. It says here that the Kansas City Chiefs kicker dared to articulate beliefs anchored in the millennia-old moral teachings of the Catholic Church, now codified in the Catechism, and followed by millions of Americans nationwide. In response, the city government, or the official Twitter account for the city government, actually doxed him. They sent out on the Twitter account just a reminder where he lives. They said specifically, by the way, just want to remind you, he lives in this specific city. So, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We're not going to say directly what you should do about that. Notice how often we get that now? The White House did this with Supreme Court justices, by the way. They told protesters to go illegally threaten them during the Dobbs decision deliberation. They were threatening violence. And by the way, somebody actually decided to go try to take out a Supreme Court justice during that time. We don't talk about that too much for some reason. So the left is ordering hits on people who disagree with their ideology, disagree with their quest to destroy the traditional family, destroy religion. And that quest is really just centered on one thing: getting rid of these barriers to total power, because they want to remake the world in their image. And as long as you're sitting there with your wife and your kids and your happy family, worshiping God and defining what you should be doing in your life by his tenets rather than by the ideology of the state, you're a problem. You're a stumbling block to power. And they are never going to leave you alone. My fellow conservatives, my brothers in Christ, let me tell you, these people will never leave you alone. The team that wants to win is going to beat the people who want to be left alone here. And it's very clear what's being done. This is persecution of Christians, and the church needs to speak out. If your pastor's not talking about this this weekend, they're a coward. If you're a pastor and you're not talking about this weekend, you're a coward. Okay? Over 80 churches have been burned in Canada. Actually, they're nearing 100 now. The churches never stopped burning. But over 80 churches burned in Canada because the Canadian government colluded with the media to lie about mass graves of Indigenous children being found at a boarding school that was run by the Catholic Church. It turned out to be a complete lie. They spent $8 million and 3 years searching for these remains, and it was completely a lie. But in the meantime, Justin Trudeau lowered the flags at half staff, and he said that this was a terrible reminder of a dark history. Even the Pope Francis, man, I'm glad I'm not a Catholic just for that reason. Pope Francis went out and called it a genocide, threw Canadian Christians under the bus while their churches burned. Okay? And we have to hear from people about the dangers of Christian nationalism and the dangers of Christians wanting power or realizing that they need to wield state power in order to protect their families. Screw these people. That's enough. I'm done with this. I've had it. Okay? I'm sorry. They're threatening this man's family because he loves his wife and said so out loud, was caught on tape, committed the crime of loving his wife in public. Canadian churches are burning to the ground because Christians abandoned the public institutions, gave over power to the secular state, and instead of being treated as, they thought if they were just, pacifistic enough, and if they acted, very, Curtis Yarvin, I like a lot of what he says, but he says you need to act like a prey animal. Guess what happens to prey animals? They get ate. Okay? And that's what's happening here. Christians are acting like prey animals, and they're getting eaten. Their churches are being burned down. Threats are being leveled against them. Why? Because they believe in the Bible and they say so out loud. Okay? They're not going to leave you alone because you abandon power. And look, I got problems with Christian nationalism, not because I like a lot of people who espouse it. I agree with them on a lot of stuff. I have some tactical and philosophical concerns with different aspects of that. I've done shows on that and go into detail, so I'm not going to do it here, but you can look those up if you want to get my take on that. But ultimately, all the concerns of these people are right. Look what's happening here. You cannot be a Christian in the United States anymore. It's literally going to get people to call for your death. Okay? And for all the boomers out there who are like, oh, well, that's just part of being a Christian. You lived through the benefit of Christendom your entire life. Okay? You grew up in a safe, organic, real society because it was Christian. And because we didn't protect it, now we live here. So I don't want to hear how great it is to be a martyr. Yeah, martyrdom is part of the history of the church. We are called to it when it is necessary. But guess what? Christendom and the dominance of Christianity in the West and its rule over the West for well over 1,000 years is also part of church history. And one that seems to be just conveniently discarded when we have this discussion. And I am very tired. I am very sick of people telling me that acquiring power for the protection of your community is the worst evil imaginable. If that's your viewpoint, then go sit in the corner, okay? Go. You just open your doors, let someone come in and steal all your stuff and hurt your family. If that's how you feel about it. But that is not what the Bible calls us to. That's not what Christianity calls you to. Christianity is not a suicide mission for everybody who adopts it. Obviously, or it wouldn't be here, okay? So obviously, we should be able to have a society that prefers Christianity, protects Christians, and definitely doesn't allow agents of the state to just stand by as churches are burned, or directly go out and dox and call for the hurt, the injuring, the possible death of somebody just because they said, hey, I really like that my wife treats me kindly and cares about our children and prefers her role as a wife and a homemaker over perhaps some great career. Just saying that out loud, and the state wants to send people to hurt you. This is unacceptable. I've had enough of it. I'm tired of pretending like oh well, if we just leave this alone, if we're just passive enough, eventually they'll realize that they shouldn't be doing this to you? No. Or they'll stop seeing you as a threat? No. They understand you're a threat. Even if you do nothing, even if you just live your life to yourself as a Christian, you are a threat to the regime. Because what the regime wants is total loyalty to the state, total loyalty to the state religion, total subservience to the state religion. You are going to have to bend the knee to Caesar or they will kill you. That is their plan. And I'm sorry, but you need to figure out a way to protect your family. That is your duty. Okay? So you need to get involved. You need to become part of your school board. You need to get somebody who has your views elected sheriff, county commission, preferably governor of your state. You need to start binding yourselves into communities of people who are able to work together and push back against this. Okay? And telling me that we can all just sit around and sit passively by and not care about power or the government, that's insane. You need to stop. It's dangerous. People are getting hurt. People are getting killed. It's only getting worse for people out there, and it will continue to get worse while you make excuses for sitting on the sidelines during all of this. All right, guys, switch over to the questions of the people real quick. Sorry, this is a little short, but like I said, voices under duress here. Let's see. Reese says, unfortunately, the man versus bear in the woods convo comes up at work for me. What are your thoughts on the insane viral take? Thanks for all you do. Well, thank you very much. Oh, man, I appreciate that. So for people who are unaware, because this is really a very online thing, but apparently it is, Twitter terrifyingly actually is real life, unfortunately, to some degree, as you can tell by the fact that this discourse has made it into the real world. So for people who are unfamiliar, what happened here was like basically, and I don't know the exact origins, but someone, women started saying, "Hey, would you prefer to run into a bear in the woods or some man you don't know?" And women said, "I would rather run into the bear because it's less likely to hurt me." And that just tells you kind of where male female relations are. In some ways, it's really an indication that. And to be clear, this is obviously not all women. I mean, this guy is talking to, the reason this guy got in trouble is he was talking to a bunch of Catholic women that probably don't agree with this. But it is a non-zero. I'm not going to pretend like this isn't an issue in the culture. The best thing you can do is find a woman who doesn't agree with this. But obviously, we can't just ignore the fact that this is the cultural zeitgeist because it is poisoning the ability of men and women to form relationships. Look, ultimately, the problem is this. Yeah, of course, yeah. Do women not understand the dangers that bear poses? Do they not understand what's happening here? Sure, I guess, but that's not really the problem you're having. The expression of preference for the bear is just a way for women to hurt men because they feel like they're hurt, and they feel like a lot of women this is a very complex situation, and there are a lot of structural issues that disadvantage men who are looking for relationships, and I'm not trying to deny that right here. So please hear me. I'm not ignoring the fact that there are legal and cultural structures here that are poisoning the well against men. But men and women do ultimately have to get together. Okay, and the solution to this problem is not online. The solution to this problem is not in the public discourse. Okay, women are never going to bind themselves to abstract men. One of the problems with the total state is it divides everyone into these voting blocks so it can wedge them against each other. To create these friend enemy blocks. And women and men in the same culture from the same nation cannot be enemies against each other. That can't happen. That's suicidal, and we're seeing it right now. The suicide of our culture over this. You have to be able to work together. You have to be able to form loving families for your own good, your own health, and for the health of successive generations. And that's why we're not having successive generations now because of this. There's a reason that we're facing a birth rate issue and a crisis, really a demographic crisis, and it's because of this attitude. And ultimately, we have to find a way for men and women to get together and form loving families. And as you can see, when someone says how good that is, the whole state tries to attack them. To be fair to women, now there are a lot of men who, maybe because they just are expressing a natural preference, or they simply have not been conditioned by society to take on these roles. They've not been taught the virtues necessary. There are a lot of men who have been told, well, the women are equal to you, so you don't need to provide for them and you don't need to protect them. And actually, you don't need to, to treat them particularly well. You don't need to understand what you're asking of them in the same way that they don't seem to understand what they're asking of you. And that's really the problem when every one of these things is just transactional, when literally they're just like giving HR accountants to hookers. When every relationship is just transactional, then it's not human. And humans have to be dependent on each other, and humans have to sacrifice for each other. And that's a scary thing because a lot of us just want to be individuals. We want to have total agency. And we don't want to be a scenario where we owe anyone anything. Because if we owe people things and we're dependent on people and they fail us, we are hurt real bad. And so it can feel better to just be dependent on an impersonal system. And that's really what women are saying here is I'd rather be dependent on an impersonal system that I won't be emotionally wounded by, even if it treats me badly, than a man. The bear is just a proxy here. So yeah, I mean, I understand that technically the debate's about a bear, but that's not really what's happening. It's not really the discussion that's happening. And the solution to this, unfortunately, is not online. The solution is one-on-one, finding the right people, sharing the same values, building an organic relationship. Sorry, but we're not going to get this sweeping change at the 5,000 foot level that changes the way that women and men view each other. Ultimately, all of the things that create culture right now are trying to tear people apart, and the only way you're going to fix this is in the micro at the moment. And sorry, but that's just the truth. Skeptical Panda says, I am a threat to the new world order. Absolutely. I hate the Antichrist. All right. ML Wiz says, strength is a virtue. Good show, Auron. Absolutely. Okay. Sorry, people, but you got to develop strength and you got to be willing to use it. All right. Let's see. Matt Grader says, Auron, I got your book on day one. Can't wait to start reading it after I finish the book I'm currently reading. Thanks for the work you do. Thank you very much. I'm honored to be in your yet to be read stack as someone who has my own yet to be read stack that is always growing higher. I get it. You gotta work your way through that backlog. But it's an honor just to be in your stack. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate all of you who have gone out and gotten the book, who have read it. I've already gotten great reviews from people, and I appreciate that so much. I'm going to be doing even more media on this. I think you'll see me on some of the larger shows here eventually as we go along. So I think things are going to continue to do well for the book, and I appreciate those of you who have supported it. If you want to go on Amazon and give a review, guys, that really helps. Of course, anything that boosts that, gets it to the front of the page. It's always a great thing. Robert Weinsfeld says, Unchosen Bonds, good stuff. Shout out to my and all the trad wives out there. Absolutely, guys. Eventually, we have to understand that there are duties and responsibilities in our life that we do not choose. And the point is not to emancipate ourselves from that bonds, but to take up our cross, to carry it, and to care for others. That's what's going to make us virtuous. That's what's going to build better communities. That's what's going to win this fight at the end of the day. Let's see. Tiny Rick says, don't hesitate to poke fun at women who think this way. Tell the truth, cultivate goodwill, carry on. Yeah, to be clear, so there was, there's this video that goes around online every once in a while of a woman who's got a bow staff, and she's like maybe 90 pounds wet. And there's all these feminists who are like, yeah, she could take all these dudes in a fight. You think, overweight guys, could you think you could take her in a fight, but she could take you because she's got skills. And it's like, you could just tell that people are completely unfamiliar with violence. Like entire generations now have grown up just never getting into a fight. And so there's just completely unaware of the realities of what it means to be in a physical altercation. Look, I'm not going to pretend to be some kind of super soldier here. Like I'm not this badass, but I used to train judo and jujitsu and Muay Thai for several years. And I'm not a master, you won't see me winning any tournaments or anything, but I got hit and hit people and choked people out and got choked out on a pretty regular basis. And so I'm not saying that I could take everybody, but I'm just familiar enough with what it means to be in a fist fight or in a wrestling match to know what happens here. And yeah, look, obviously there's a guy who's like very out of shape and weak and small, and there's like probably some highly trained woman, some Ronda Rousey, who could take him out. But in general, I think there is just a Marvel movie understanding of how violence works and what can be done there. If you've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, one of my favorite moments of that movie is like Bruce Lee, who obviously is incredibly talented fighter, but and obviously this is a fictional account, but I think it's a good representation of like what people don't understand. Like Bruce Lee is an incredible fighter, but he's like 130 pounds, and so he goes up against Brad Pitt's character, who's just like a boxer who was in like the Navy or something. But he's like 200 pounds, and he's got about 6 inches of reach on him, and he just like throws him into a car. If you've ever seen this, there's the Conor McGregor sparring with the guy who plays the Mountain in Game of Thrones, and of course Conor McGregor is like a champion. He's a world champion. He's like one of the best fighters to ever exist in his weight class. But when he fights the Mountain, like the Mountain's just laughing at him, right? Like he's giving it all his all, and he's like ripping in to this giant like 6'7" actor or whatever, and the guy's just like laughing at him because the difference is just too much. Like all the skill in the world is not going to stop the just the fact of physics and how actual combat works. And so the fact that so many women like have seen like Black Widow throw somebody with her legs in a Marvel movie, and you're like, yeah, that's how violence works. That's a problem for society, and this is just what happens when things are this abstract. I think that unfortunately, like there's just a hard reality factor that has to reset people's brains when they've been kind of propagandized this for a long time. And I'm not really wishing for that because the reset hurts real bad. But I don't think anything else really gets us out of this. And in the meantime, the best thing you can do is find people who have not been completely poisoned by this mind virus, link up with them, and build better things. All right, guys, thank you so much for coming by. Really enjoyed talking to all of you. Always fantastic to have the chat, take questions, get to interact with you guys. Thank you, chat, for saving me from technical difficulties today. That was very kind of you, especially as I try to struggle through doing this show while I'm sick. So thank you, everybody, once again for coming by. If it's your first time here, make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the channel, click the bell, notifications, everything, so you can catch these streams when they go live, and you can tell me when my audio is failing. And also, if you would like to get the broadcast as podcasts, go to your favorite podcast platform and enter the Auron MacIntyre show, and you can go ahead and subscribe. And if you do that, please give a rating or review for the podcast, because once again, the algorithms tell everybody what to listen to. So it really helps when you tell them that you like the show. Thank you once again, guys, for watching. And as always, I will talk to you next time.